Okay, so I guess it's time to start. The timer is already running. So each industry has its own kind of characteristics and culture. And in my opinion, for IT, it's like a mix of rationalism and this down-to-earth approach, as well as just a pinch of geek culture and a lot of what comes from the quote by Linus Torvalds, "Talk is cheap, show me the code." And for some time recently, some people started asking questions whether our industry is diverse enough. And those questions and actions that followed made a lot of people nervous. And we would like to talk today about whether diversity is an issue in IT, and if it is, what can we do about it? So my name is Dubiel, and I work at Allegro, and I'm a team manager. I manage teams which are responsible for creating this kind of a backbone for microservices.
Yeah, and I am Joanna. Hi, I am HR business partner, and together with Adam and other managers in Allegro, we try to create the best working place possible for Allegro employees.
So Allegro is not only about solving business problems with bleeding edge tech, but it's also about creating a place to develop and grow for everyone. And if you've seen my talks before, you probably noticed that I'm kind of this JVM, down-to-earth person which tries to solve problems with code and show tests for everything that he's doing on the slides. However, it also turned out that both with Asha, we share a common interest.
Yeah, we talked and we discovered that we have this common interest, that we are interested in the mechanism hidden behind our everyday actions, our decisions, that maybe not always we are aware of, and how these decisions influence us, our society, and our everyday workplaces. So that's our interest, and we think that diversity as a topic fits very well into this category.
And so before we move on, what is a non-zero sum game at all? Why did we pick this as a subject? Well, in game theory, there are two types of games in general. One of them is when somebody has to win, where somebody has to lose for other person to win. And this is a zero-sum game. So we have a limited amount of resources, and somebody has to get more of it, so the other one gets less. The other type of games are the non-zero-sum games. And those are the games in which the win-win situations are possible, meaning by cooperating, we can actually gain more than by competing. And question is diversity one or the other? And thus, before we dive deeper, I would like to dwell a bit on this question. How aware are you of the actions and decisions that you make every day? And in order to do so, we have two questions for you, or problems to solve. One of them is 2 + 2 = 4. Of course, it's 4. And I know that you had an answer in your head as soon as you saw the slide. You probably didn't even notice that you have this answer already. You just knew it. On the other hand, if I ask all of you to solve this equation, I guess since we're all here, most of us here are engineers, so you probably know the method. If you just got a piece of paper, you probably would be able to solve it, to find those solutions, but it's not so obvious. So it's as if in our heads, in our brains, there were those two personas, and one just knows the answers, and when it knows the answers, you can just say it. And the other one, well, it takes a bit more time to power up, to start up, and to come up with any solutions. And of course, there are no two personas in our brain. It's just one. But those are different modes in which our brains operate. And you might say now that I'm saying just some obvious things, because we all know how it all works. But for researching those obvious things, people actually got Nobel Prizes. And those people were Daniel Kahneman and Aaron Tversky. And they got a Nobel Prize for researching how our brains impact the decisions we make and the actions that we take. And they called those different modes of operating System 1 and System 2. So System 1 is the part of our brain that knows all the answers immediately, if it knows them. It's very quick, it's very efficient, but it's kind of a power save mode. You can think of it as kind of a cache or hash map where you can quickly retrieve data from. But you don't really do much computation. So if you just, and for the most of the day, we operate using System 1. We don't think about most of our actions. If you just went out the door and closed them with your key, you probably don't even remember it anymore. The System 2 is the one which actually takes time to power up, so it's pretty slow. And because of this time and the complexity, it needs a lot of energy to operate. So we are kind of reluctant to use it needlessly. So we need a problem to focus on, and then we can start System 2. And the question is, how do they relate to the decisions that we make? How do they drive our everyday lives?
Yeah, so System 1 has its obvious benefits. It's fast because it's based on mental schemes and heuristics, which are also called shortcut thinking. So, for example, when you meet a new person, you don't analyze hours of its nature, combining different facts. Probably after a few minutes or even a few seconds, you incorporate this person into one of your schemas. So you may think, oh, she's similar to my friend. So basically, schemas help us limit the complexity of information and decide on one. But one of the biggest downside of System 1 and those schemas are stereotypes, which can be sometimes hurtful for others.
And so we have a short story for you to read in a moment, and just answer yourself this one question. What did they think of immediately after reading it? So a father and son are in a horrible car crash, and father dies. The son is rushed to the hospital. Just as he's about to go under the knife, the surgeon says, "I'm sorry, I can't operate. That boy is my son."
Yeah, so what was your first thought when you read the story? What was yours, Adam?
So for me, it's that it's impossible because the father of this person is already dead, so who would say?
Okay.
Who's the surgeon?
Okay. So it's a high chance if we ask each one of you on the audience what you thought. Some of you probably would have same thoughts as Adam. As research shows, people who read the story, their first thought is surgeon is a man, so this is not possible because he's dead. The first thought is not surgeon is a woman, which in fact this is the thing in this story. Surgeon is a woman and she is a mother of this child.
So in our culture, in our society, we somehow associated this role of a doctor with a male person, with a man. And even though after thinking a bit about this example, we all know that it has to be the mother, the first thought, our bias, is towards saying it's impossible. And this is not an example that we came up with, so if it felt a bit too morbid, there's an alpaca for you to cheer up the mood. But, well, let's get on. So the stereotypes can create powerful unconscious bias. So you were not even probably conscious of the thought that you had, that it's impossible, like it came from nowhere. And just last week, I had this situation in which I was in a classroom during studies, and professor came in, and my first impression was like, okay, this guy, like a tall, pretty handsome guy with glasses, he probably knows what he's doing. And the lecture is going to be interesting. And not more after probably 2 minutes, as he started talking and articulating, I was like, I caught this thought passing through my brain. This guy really resembles me of one person that I really don't like. And I noticed that this thought also had this great amount of judgment in itself, like this lecture is probably not going to be good anymore. And I'm fortunate that I caught this thought in passing before it started acting on my emotions and on my opinions, because if I didn't notice it and didn't actually challenge it and put it to sleep, I would probably stop listening and start passing on opinions about the lecturer that, he's not very good. So stereotypes, they create really, really powerful unconscious bias.
Yeah. So what we ask you for today, for the sake of this presentation at least, to question your reasoning and to switch to slow mindset, to system 2, just to listen to different facts and different points of view and make more informed decisions.
So there's a storyboards and orchestra.
Yeah. So for today, we will have a bit of stories for you. And the first one is about history of the orchestra. And you can imagine how it looks like to audition for an orchestra. So basically, you come into a room, you sit down. In front of you, this recruitment committee. You start playing, they listen to your music. And this is how it looked like in 1970s, where the directors of the orchestra were sure that they only focus on the quality of the music, nothing else. So you can imagine how surprised they were when a team of researchers proposed them to introduce the blind auditions. So in blind auditions, candidates were behind curtains, so the directors or the recruitment committee could not see them. And they listen to the music. And you can think that if nothing else matters, only quality of the music, it doesn't matter whether this is a blind or a standard audition, the outcome should be absolutely the same. And the research showed something a bit different. So in the blind audition, the blind audition increased the number of women by 40% in the orchestras. And what is very interesting here is that the directors, the recruitment committees were sure that they only focus on the quality of the music, nothing else. This example shows that sometimes our decisions are based on unconscious biases, even if our intentions are good. And that sometimes we are not sure. We are not sure what drives all of our decisions.
So there's this saying that you should fake it till you make it, and although it might not seem like a really good professional advice, it turns out that it might actually work.
Yeah. So there's another example. This is a study done by University of Melbourne, and basically they found out that there is a high correlation between self-confidence and professional success. So they gather a group of corporate professionals, people from around different companies in US, and they ask them about to describe their self-confidence levels during high school, primary school, university, and today. And they found out that people who had a high self-confidence level during the school years earned better wages and were promoted more quickly than the others. And there's another example by Amy Cuddy, and she found out that people who increased their level of self-confidence just before the interviews were assessed better than people who didn't.
So there are some forces in our head that we are not unaware of, and we just call them system 1. And we should, if we become aware of it, of how it works, we can try to minimize their effects on our actions and decisions. And of course, it means that we have to be very careful while using tools like stereotypes and mental schemes, like those boxes in our head, which might be very useful, but they also might be really harmful. And if we minimize the effect of our unconscious bias, we can actually create a better workplace for everyone, because we wouldn't like to be judged by the amount of self-confidence that we project each day, or by any other non-merit things that do not come from merit. So what does it have to do with the diversity itself? Because we just talked about how our brains work, how we make our decisions, but how does it correlate with diversity? And then once again, we have this fake it till you make it. So self-confidence is really crucial. And it just so happens that statistically, women and men tend to view their accomplishments in a bit different light. So this applies to women, but also researchers found that it also applies to national minorities. And so they asked one simple question. Do you feel like you're actually reaching the high standards that you set for yourself? So you yourself think that this level is a job well done, and do you think that you're actually doing the job well done? Or maybe not, you're failing to. And in different environments, the results are a bit different, but consistently, turns out that women more often feel like they do not meet those high standards. So at work, it's like almost 40% of women don't feel like they do so, compared to 25% of men. And at home, it's 30% of women compared to like 15% of men. And so...
Yeah, so we have a question for you. Just imagine you see a job description. And the question is, would you apply for the job even if you don't meet some of the criteria or you don't meet all of the criteria? And again, there is a study which shows that women need to fulfill 100% of the criteria to apply, where men needs around 60% to feel, okay, I'm ready for the job, I can apply.
Well, so it turns out that the solution is really simple. Just be more confident.
Yeah, and you may think, okay, so we just need to increase the level of self-confidence for women. However, again, this is not that easy as it may look like. The Harvard University did a study where they gave group of students, the same, the same story of two people. So there was a woman and a man, and the stories were the same, exactly the same. And there were stories of their professional life. They were both successful. And students read the stories and were asked to describe in few words women and men. And while man was described as self-confident and he knows what he wants to do in his life person, woman was described as a cold bitch. So this example shows that even if women are self-confident, especially in male-dominated roles, they might be perceived negatively.
Yeah. So according to the deep dive study, which was done after seeing the results that women are actually don't really want to apply for a job when they don't feel like they meet all the criteria. There was a deep dive study to ask why. Like, what did you feel? What made you decide not to do this? And the top 3 reasons are pretty interesting. So both for men and for women, the top one is that they don't want to waste their energy and time on this fruitless endeavor. So it's not going to happen anyway. But then it gets more interesting. So women felt more often, 20% of them, like they don't want to fail in front of the hiring committee. So they want to go into the job interview and show themselves as failures. So there was some risk associated with this. And as much as 15% of women felt that once they saw the job description, everything that's in a job description you have to fulfill in order to get the job. So these are strict requirements. These are not just, things that we wrote in the job description.
Yeah, so it looks a bit like a woman might feel that their potential to learn is not that important, and especially during interview, and they need to know absolutely everything to apply for a job.
Yeah, and as you know, if they become self-confident, well, there are other negative things towards it. So we're talking a lot about biases, and none of us would want to be judged only based on those biases. But we have a tool for this, and it's called Meritocracy. So from its name, it means judging by merit, and merit only. And is it really that it levels the playing field for everyone? There's a study in which Cornell University asked almost 450 managers to rate different people, to assess different people, based on the descriptions of them. So they took a bunch of descriptions of different personas, of their achievements at work, and they randomly added a name and the sex to each of the file. And first, they asked those managers to assess those people in the first company. And this assessment was treated as a baseline, so they would know how those managers, in general, assess people. And once it was done, they gave those managers another file of descriptions, once again with randomized names and genders, for the other company. And the only detail that was different, it was that the other company, in its description, it was said that this company values meritocracy, that this is the place where we judge only based on merit. So you might think that the obvious result of this study is that probably nothing should change. So people both in the first and in the other company should be assessed in the same way. Or maybe even, since we are so focused on meritocracy, maybe managers did better job in the second company. We're assessing people from the second company. Actually, it turned out that compared to the baseline, women from second company were given lower raises and less promotions than in the first company. So just putting in meritocracy or trying to implement meritocracy in your workplace doesn't mean that you're going to see the results that you hoped for. And why is it? Well, it's the orchestra once over again. So we got a bunch of experts who really think, goodwill experts, who really think that what all they do is judge based on merit. And yet, they don't. This is called the paradox of meritocracy. So feeling that we're so sure that we judge only on merit makes us less incentivized to question our own reasoning. So we feel like we've done all this job, that we really have those values in our hearts, and we let our guard down and the unconscious biases creep in once again. And so this is called the mind trap of overconfidence. So even if you know everything about system 1 and 2, and you make a list of all the things that you should think about before making any decisions, you're actually stepping into this territory of the overconfidence. So you feel you've done such a great work that you stop thinking about your decisions, you stop questioning yourself. And Daniel Kahneman, the author of the book Thinking Fast and Slow, who actually came up with Tversky, with those names, System 1 and 2, when asked if, since he's such an expert in questioning decisions and making rational choices, is he better at making better? Is he good at making better decisions? Is he better than average person? He says no. No, because those things are unconscious, and it's really hard to get rid of them. Even if you're pretty aware about the theory, it's kind of hard to put it in practice.
Yeah. And one of the places that we are sure we make our decisions based on merit is recruitment process. And as we mentioned before, during the recruitment process, sometimes self-confidence can be as important or even more important than merit. And this judgment that we make during the interviews is done very quickly. So research shows that recruiters make their decisions after 4 minutes of 30 minutes interview. So you may ask yourself a question, is this decision based on the competencies of this candidate, or is it based on unconscious biases of interviewer?
So once again, we don't want our professional success to depend on somebody else's mood, his stereotypes. So we believe that we need to minimize the effect of those unconscious biases to create a better workplace for everyone around here. And so it's also very hard just to walk around all life and question every decision that you make and focus on these unconscious biases and try to make the system 2, the slower one, the one which needs more energy, to work. So is it even worth to make the effort? Why can't we just leave things as they are? Well, just from my experience, whenever a new person comes into one of my teams, I can see that the creative juices start flowing and they start, they come with some kind of an experience of their own. They introduce new languages. They challenge the things or the ways we do things routinely that we probably stopped thinking about. And you can see that by sharing these experiences, it actually makes us better at our jobs. And you're all here on GeeCON in order to share experiences with totally different people from different environments and to be better at your job. And so your team is probably already pretty diverse. The team you work in is probably already pretty diverse. So for a long time, we've known that it's good to have people with different levels of experience. Like, we have junior developers and mid developers and then senior developers in teams. And you maybe even have a scrum master or product owner, people with totally different backgrounds. and different work and life experiences, which came from different industries, probably worked in some different companies beforehand. But what we ask you is to try and add more dimensions to this diversity matrix. Dimensions like sex, gender, and nationality. And, well, it turns out that it's worth doing so.
Yeah, there is a lot of research, and at the end of this presentation, we will show you the slide with all the research that we are citing here. However, there is a lot of research done on the fact that diverse teams are more effective. So on the one side, it's proven that similar people work well together. And this is also okay. However, as the tasks get more complex, diverse teams achieve better results. So in other words, the diversity of personalities together with team competences increase teams' performance. And this especially happens when the tasks that you deal with are highly complex.
And of course, in IT, we would like to think that we do not solve trivial and easy tasks. We only deal with complex problems, and we find complex solutions to them. And so it's not only about the effectiveness of single teams.
Yeah, it's also about just being, just achieve better financial results. Again, there's a lot of studies that found out this. However, we want to give you just one example. Boston Consulting Group did a really huge study on 1,700 companies in various industries in 8 countries, and they found out that teams that are managed by diverse managers, managed teams, have 19% higher revenue. And again, you may ask, why is that? And the answer is very simple. It's innovation. So the study found that those teams create better innovations, and those better innovations increase the performance of these companies.
And it kind of makes sense, because if you pose a problem and complex problem, and you give it to a team of people who come from different backgrounds, have different perspectives, the solutions which they come up with is going to be looked at from different angles, and it's probably going to be more robust, and it's going to fit the ever-changing market better.
Yeah. And we are sure that if we ignore the diversity, we may miss a lot of opportunities. So unfortunately in Poland, in terms of the women work activity ranking, we have just 64%, and we are at the very end of this ranking. The average is 66%, and for example, Sweden has 80%. And according to McKinsey Global Institute, if we increase the women's activity, we may increase our GNP by 7% by 2025, which means that we will get additional 1.3 trillion zlotys to our budget.
Okay, so that's a lot of money we can get just from encouraging women to actually work with us in the work market. And so it will not just happen by itself. We have to put some effort in order to make it happen. And the data which really strikes me and which illustrates this problem, I think, in a really convincing way, is the data about how many girls and women actually enroll to IT faculties in Poland, and how many of them enter job market. So the number of women who enroll onto IT faculties on Polish universities is growing rapidly, and it's actually growing faster than the rate of men. So we have like 14% of people on IT faculties are women. But along the way, something happens, and only a quarter of them actually enter the job market. So it's only 3% of those women. So somewhere along the way, we had this motivated motivated women who had the skills because they actually got into the university, who had the confidence, who had the motivation to do this work, who probably had some passion for it. And before they are able to actually enter the job market, most of them are already gone. Why? Well, maybe we're doing something wrong, and maybe we should start thinking about how to fix it. So what can we do about it? Where to even start? Well, first of all, there are some things that all of us can do. And this is a time for me to share a bit a small embarrassing story. So it happens to, of course, it happens to everyone. And what happened was that I met a colleague from work, a girl, and we were talking. And I knew that she worked at the company for some time, but I didn't really know what she was working on. And so, like, during the chit chat, I just asked the question, so what are you testing in your team? And she looked at me and she was like, well, I'm a developer. And I was like so embarrassed because, my brain just, there's a woman in the company, she's in IT, so she's maybe a tester or something. So remember, like, challenge, this is system one at work. This is my unconscious bias. So I was not even aware of what I said before I said it, and it was not a, pleasant thing to say. So just remember, women on conferences aren't all from HR or from recruitment. And in your IT department, they are not testers, UX, and product managers. They can be everyone. Just don't judge based on your unconscious bias and on system one working.
Yeah, and what we also encourage you to do is to be open to helping others. So in other words, to mentor others if you have a chance. Especially we talk about people who are entering the job market and people who want to change their professional careers. So they're doing something at the moment, but they're not happy with it. And they want to kind of switch to other sectors, especially in technology, of course. So it would be great if you can help those people. We try to do that in Allegro. And we especially help people who want to change their careers and switch to technology.
And you can do this by mentoring, different mentoring programs.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of mentoring programs we've got at the moment at the market, and also the studies and research shows that mentoring programs are really helpful with increasing the diversity of people in the company.
But also, when it's not only an individual action, we can do things in our companies. So first of all, we talked a lot about system one during this talk about those unconscious biases. And the way to get rid of them is actually to create processes that make it harder for those biases to creep in. So it's hard to rely on every single person in the company or which takes part in the process, like interviewing process, to be aware all the time of all the unconscious biases it might have. And what help us are properly and well-designed processes. So we talk about processes like recruitment and sourcing, interviews, hiring decisions, and evaluations. So focus on the processes which actually are linked with developing people, with assessing them. Because this is the place where those biases, they can really creep in and they can do the real damage.
Yeah. So we have few examples, just certain examples, what you can have a look at or focus on, especially in terms of recruitment. So there is a lot of said about job description to think and to check whether there are much different styles of thinking and they targets different types of group on the market, not only people similar to us in our company. We also should make sure that the interviews are structured. What does it mean? It means that if you have different types of candidates, if you have candidates in the process, many different candidates, they should have very similar recruitment experience in terms of the questions or the cases they got. So they should have similar cases, similar questions asked during the interviews.
Yeah, and it does not mean that you have to come up with a piece of paper with questions written on it, just ask those questions. It should still be a conversation, but in order to make the process fair, everyone should get more or less the same challenge.
Yeah, exactly. We also encourage you to write down your feedback. This is something that we do at Allegro. So before we go and talk about candidate with others, we write down the feedback to see whether what kind of arguments we've got, whether they are based on facts, which is the next point, or whether they are based on maybe some our beliefs or biases, or he reminded me of somebody or whatever. So do that, and then be aware of feelings and thoughts and challenge them, and remember that lack of self-confidence doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have the competencies to do the job.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people are afraid that by being open to diversity, it actually means that we're somehow going to meddle with the outcomes of all those processes. Well, what we think, what we believe, what should be done is that we should really care for the diverse input. So as Asha said, we should reach for different people on the market and make sure that they know about their company, and also that they know that we're open to have them in our company, that we have a workplace which is going to value their work and only work, their merit. And if you put those people in processes designed to limit the unconscious bias, the outcomes are going to be, first of all, fair, and they're also going to be diverse, probably. So if you're just going to reach out to people and say, come to our company, do some diversity actions, but you'll put those people later in the processes which are full of unconscious biases, well, the results are not probably going to be good. So the processes are really crucial here, and also focus on the input. The outcome is going to come up by itself. And well, our thoughts for the takeaway thoughts. Diversity will not just happen by itself. So we have to really focus and put effort in making it happen. And as you've seen, there are a lot of places in which those unconscious biases can creep in. So be aware of them and watch out for them. Like in your daily life, when you make some important decisions, or even the smaller decisions when you're just doing a chit-chat in the kitchen, because things you say might be careful, like what I said. And in order to help people deal with those things, just create processes around your people's development in which you minimize the effects of unconscious biases.
Yeah, and we strongly believe that if we create a diverse environment, this means that we will create a better workplace for everyone. So not only for a certain group, but for everybody who works in the company, for ourselves. So for us, it's a non-zero-sum game.
Yep. So these are the research that we found and that we used in this talk. And we are open now to any questions. If you don't have them now, we're going to be at Allegro booth for the next hour probably, or even more. So if you just...
A lot of questions,
wow.
Great.
So if you want to talk in private, we can do it at our booth, but there are a lot of questions, so I need to do some magic with the computer now to show them on the big screen. So, okay, let's see. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Oh, great. So we have to read them first. Mm-hmm. So let's start from the beginning. I'm going to just come up here.
So?
What? Yeah. So are you sure that higher revenue comes from the diversity? Could it be that it's bigger companies that engage into diversity? Is it correlation and implication? Well, this is not the data that we came out with. It was done by Boston Consulting Group.
Yeah.
And it's not that they were looking for smaller companies and bigger companies. The explicit result of the study was that it's because of how innovative they become. So if their management team is more diverse, it actually drives innovation. So you can challenge the study itself. It's in the links that we posted, but we saw that the explicit result was, the explicit explanation for it was that diversity is the driver of innovation. Not only one, but one of them.
Yeah.
And it actually,
Yeah. So exactly, it doesn't mean that if you don't have diverse teams, you are not going to be innovative. No, it just showed more than more diversity there is, the better innovation there are in the companies that this study researched.
Okay, the second one is for me, so it's a hard one. So why is assuming that a girl is a tester embarrassing? I don't know. This might be as well.
There's also a very similar question.
Yeah.
Why is being a tester more?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so this is once again maybe my bias, and I just said something wrong here. I don't think it's embarrassing. I think the point I was trying to make is that I blindly assumed that she's going to be a tester, not a developer, although if I approached a man, I would just ask him what he develops, not what he tests. So it's not about a certain role being more embarrassing than other. I wouldn't say so at any point. It's just that I have this assumption that I had certain assumptions in my head, and I don't think it's really good to actually walk around and putting those assumptions all the time. Okay. Have you searched for researchers that contradicts what we've just said? There is no consensus among researchers on this topic. Well, I think you would have to show the specific research we would have to contradict, like, I don't know, the research with revenues or something. I don't know if they do the mic questions. So it would be probably easier to just take one research and to show about them. So Asia did a lot of research on this topic.
Yeah.
She can probably talk more.
Do you want to ask the question more or no? No, not. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, we were thinking about this, and we were thinking whether we should put a lot of other studies, because, yeah, I can tell you that there is also some studies on the market that's saying also that diversity, for example, in talking about teams, diversity can also be very difficult for the teams. Because, on the one side, this is a great story, put many people together in one room who have different ideas from different backgrounds, different universities, whatever, and they will come out with great ideas. On the other hand, they also may argue. And they also, I don't know, can just say that I don't want to work with him and just goodbye. So there are some research that also tells that this is very difficult, in fact, to have diverse teams. But those researchers don't say, so don't do it. They say companies needs a lot of time, they need a bit of effort, energy, and some, I don't know, training to implement diversity into companies.
And also what we actually looked for were not single research, but also so-called meta-analysis.
Yeah.
So, you get a bunch of research and you got, I don't know, like 20 research, and then you make an analysis of the results of those research. So this is called the meta-analysis, and we also tried to use them because they show the current state of the art from many sources, not just single ones.
Yeah.
So, do you think that stereotypes are always about?
I answer that.
Okay.
No, of course not. I mean, we cannot live without stereotypes. It's just not possible. We make so many decisions every day that some of them, that stereotypes basically help us sometimes to make these decisions, and that's okay. But on the other side, as we just mentioned, we just wanted to say that sometimes they can be hurtful for others. And we believe that in the topic of diversity, it's closely connected to stereotypes in some ways. I mean, probably there is no direct connection, but there is some indirect connection that stereotypes may not help in increasing the diversity just because of the unconscious biases. So the answer is no.
So the other one is, why do women think they need to know everything to apply? Well, I don't know.
That's a good question for women.
So we didn't give like very definite answers to some questions that we posed, because the research usually shows the effects, and it's really hard to get into somebody's brain and make a correlation across hundreds of people and talk about it, like get into everybody's brains. So they show the effect, but there are lots of things that compound onto this effect. And this one study shown that, well, sometimes they just think, like 15% of women asked in the study thought that they simply need to, because job description is like what you're going to do, and you have to know it from day one. So this is one of the possible answers to this question.
Another one, would you rather have an employee that is very confident and has basic level of required skills, or is very intelligent, skilled one that's not confident at all? So it depends. I would say it depends what kind of candidates you are looking for. Of course, there are jobs there where you need to be confident, and it will be difficult for you to be always shy, introvert, etc. But we just want to say that there are not all the cases. We don't always need people who are very confident, know what to want to say. And again, remember that recruitment process and interview is a specific situation. If you have a person on the interview and the person is not self-confident at this moment, it doesn't mean that this person is not confident at all. It just means that there's stress. The new person, she knows or he knows that he's being judged. So we need to take this into consideration and not just judge on the fact that she wasn't self-confident during the interview, or he wasn't, not employ him or her.
And at the end of the day, what we want as a company is to, hire the best people out there on the market, probably, or the best people for the job. So we shouldn't just throw away people who are not confident enough, who didn't know how to prepare for the interview. It's also our effort to make it better. Okay, we're just going to get one from the audience.
Thank you for your time. So first of all, thanks for the presentation. It's very quite nice.
We don't hear
you. Don't hear me now?
Oh, now it's great.
Okay. So it was a very nice presentation that you cover a lot of topics. So a lot of questions can be arise on many angles of that.
Yep.
However, my conclusion is here that you saying that gender, it's kind of a trait that can have some kind of more impact than other traits. And however, there's no study that shows that diversity to gender is many more significant than other traits like age, experience, ethnicity, religion, and all the other topics.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering why you're pushing so much towards this conclusion, because the whole presentation was, for me, kind of biased towards this aspect that gender has some significant impact on diversity, but there is no proof for that. There is no study that really shows that this trait is better than other traits.
So during on one of the slides, I wanted to show that we probably are already pretty diverse in our teams. Like, we have different styles of thinking and different work experience, etc., etc. It's just that we can add more dimensions to this matrix so that it becomes, even fuller. We have even more. We make the chances of building a diverse team even higher when we, add more dimensions to it. And it's not only about, of course, it's not only about gender or sex. It's also about, nationalities or culture or things like this. And this was kind of a conscious decision for us to focus on this one trait, because we think that it fits our environment better. It's less abstract for us here in Poland.
Maybe, I don't have data.
Yeah.
However, the study you cite for the company, the large company, they don't show any trait specific. They say the diversity team helps to grow better people.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line of most of the things you quoted here. The simplification by system 1 and system 2 is very nice for discussion, but it's extremely flat idea how human really works. And the other idea that someone was rated as a quoted bitch and quoted self-confident person is also how they manifest the confidence. You can be very confident and be fake confident. So there's very large studies that you covered here. So saying if a woman is self-confident, he has to be a bad person. It's a very bold statement from my point of view.
Well, there's been a lot of studies done also by this person, this Amy Cuddy, which we once quoted, that actually show that that there is this correlation between it was called compensation at this point, but doesn't matter. There is a study that we put in the materials, which actually shows that. I know it's a bold statement, but there are multiple studies which show this. So they're being done by this study, by other people, which we didn't cite in here, but we can give you them as well.
Yeah. Last question for me. So what I like very much that you attack the processes, not the people at the end, because the process are mostly how you get people hired.
Yep.
And having the process that's in Poland, mostly in Warsaw, I can say for that market, the people are not prepared to interview people, and they just go there and they just are not prepared. They just go ad hoc from the chair to the rooms, and then they go out of they have random questions, but they try to look for confirmation rather than traits. So I managed to go a couple of times being rejected of the interviews. But the people, when I was trying harder, they were just pushing harder to explore the limits of this particular knowledge gap, which is not the best thing to do in average. So how, in your opinion, a good process could look like for interview?
What do you mean, for the specific position of developers, or in
general? Let's say for that for the IT company in general, for engineer position.
So I don't know if our process is the best out there, but we think we had some experience with it, and we think that it's pretty good. Is that we have this structure, so each of the parts of the interviews, there are different parts. Each of it focus on different if different skills and has different structure, but the structure is the same for all the candidates, and we can therefore we can tweak it, and it looks for the areas, and it tries to somehow it takes into account that in your daily work what you do is Google stuff. So it's not like you can Google stuff during the interview, but it takes into account that you don't have to know everything in your brain. It's by the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes into account that it's enough if you know what to look for and if you know how things work in general.
Okay, so I'll elaborate. How many people are making decision on the hire, no hire?
At least 5.
At least 5. However, we have something which is called a hiring committee as well. So it's not only those 5 people, but then after they write down the feedback, as we mentioned, they also then discuss the candidate, the interviews, also with other people, with other senior developers or leaders in Allegro.
So 5 people actually talk with the person or have some connection with it, and the others can chime in.
Thank you for.
I'm not sure if we have. Do we have time for to answer? Okay. All right.
Okay. So there is one more probably. We can take this. Meritocracy isn't related to gender at all. You said that it's not a good criteria to assess because of gender bias. No.
No, this is not what we said.
It's not. We didn't say that meritocracy isn't good. It's good, but when we just implement it and we forget about different biases which might come with it, we forget about the paradox of meritocracy. We might actually, implement a really good thing with a good faith, but still get bad results. So, judging based on merit, it's what we want to do. But when you just implement it, when you think you implemented it, it might give you bad results. So we have to be really careful when doing so, and remember that overconfidence is somewhere there lurking. So, well, we just wanted to say something different. So I'm sorry that you understood it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the last one.
Where can I find those programs for people who would like to change their job to IT? You talked about. Yes, for sure. I mean, I would encourage this person to come to our stand so we can show you exactly where to find it and talk about it more and, encourage you to join it if you want. But then you can go to our Allegro Tech blog or web page, fan page on Facebook, for example, and we always post those events there. So if you just follow us, for sure you will know when they happen and when.
Yeah. So we have this, it's called in Polish misja zmiana branży, and it's for people who just explicitly don't work in IT and want to change their occupation.
Yeah, and there is always streaming on Facebook.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so once again, thanks to all of you for your attention, for your focus, and you can talk with us more about those topics on our booth.
Yeah, thank you.